Now that you've written in your journal, let's wrap up the module by taking a look at these 5 different forms of expression and seeing them for what they really are and looking at what might be an effective response from you. The first was when the person said, "Why do I have to do my homework before dinner?" At first glance, this might appear to be a challenging type of question or an act of defiance, but what it really is at its root is a question about information. Why do I have to do my homework before dinner deserves a reasonable and thoughtful response. And if you can't give one, then you can still be responsible by offering or being willing to listen to other suggestions. So I might offer an answer like this. Well, the last time you said you'd do your homework after dinner, it got forgotten, or you were too tired. Or, we're planning on having a late dinner tonight, so there won't be time. But the other person may have information for you that mitigates your decision. And so it's important for you to be reasonable as long as the person is being reasonable to you. And this is how we intrinsically motivate good pro-social communication between people. If we become entrenched and take an authority-based stance, saying something like, "I said so," or even thinking about that as we make our response, then we're likely to lose that individual. So for example, if I said to an individual, "Because we're going to have dinner late tonight," and the person then said to me, "Well, it's just that I haven't got much time to go outside and play hockey with my friends before it gets dark. I promise that I will do it after dinner tonight, and I'll give up watching a TV program instead," I might entertain that if there was no other reason why I would have difficulty with it. So respond reasonably and be open to a reasonable response. The second one is a more obvious choice of a person being challenging. Who made you the boss? Well, here, and it should be red, and I'm sorry it's not, don't respond at all. This is a challenging type of a question. Think of it like a baited hook, and you don't want to bite it. Because when you do that, you're going to invite that individual to engage in further power struggle with you. And it can be very what we call inadvertently reinforcing to see a person who's considered a powerful person begin to become upset. For many individuals, there is a reward in that. Even though they know they're going to lose ultimately, just seeing you starting to steam can be a very powerful thing. So instead, give the person some processing time. Just let them think about it. Withdraw yourself so that you're not egging them on. And sometimes, if it looks like it's going to be helpful, you can restate the positive contingency or set the limit. And so this is where you might be reminded to say something like this. Okay, well, if you do the vacuuming, we're going to have time to go to the movie. We don't need, remember, to say the negative contingency. And I realize how tempting it is to do that. If you do the vacuuming, we get to watch the movie. But if you don't, we don't. We don't need to give the second half of that because we're actually almost inviting the person to test our limits. So it's better just to leave the person with the positive contingency. "No, I'm not doing it, and you can't make me." I'm not sure why I have a question mark at the end here, but in any event, the person is, again, being very challenging here. And it's very important for us, very similar to the question above, to recognize that challenge and simply remain neutral. I kid you not when I say the most common response that I make to people is this word, "Okay." And I just want them to know that they're making a choice that's not loaded by or for me. It's really their choice, and it's immaterial to me whether or not they end up having a clean room or getting to go to the movies or not. The thing will be the thing. So I'm always going to remain calm and neutral, and if it looks like it's possible that I can help the person by stating that positive contingency, just like the question above, I'm going to do that. "Go ahead and try. I'll get you back later when you aren't paying attention." Well, this is a threat. So when a person makes a threat towards us, we have to take it seriously. We're going to manage that threat. So what we're going to simply do is take ourselves out of the equation and go and get help. Now, we're not going and getting help so that we can make that person clean their room. Chances are we're past that point, and we're going to have to let things become calm before we readdress that initial concern, that initial demand. Right now, we have a bigger priority. When a person gets to the point where they start to engage with threats, we need to take it seriously. And I'm not suggesting we should overreact, because that in and of itself can again be very, very empowering to an individual, can reinforce this sort of behavior when we don't want to do that. So instead, I again remain calm and neutral, and later on, when I revisit this interaction with the person, I literally say to them, at the point when you made a threat to me, I stopped being able to help you and had to put myself and other people first. In the future, if you choose to handle things this way, I'll be able to help you, but if you make threats, I'll have to leave and go and take care of other people. So it's really important that we think about that in the moment and worry about that demand, whether it's a clean room or getting homework done, another time. It's extremely important that we separate things at this moment. The same is true for the very last response, where a person is waving a fist and giving us a physical response. Again, manage the threat. Be mindful of your escape routes and of barriers. Get help. If you have a code word where you work, this is when you would use it. If you can get yourself out of that interaction calmly but efficiently, then do that and take other people out of the way as well. So, as I was speaking of earlier, I worked with people that didn't give you as much warning as even this to tell you they're going to be aggressive. We cannot assume that people are going to give us huge red flares to tell us when they're going to act out. When they're waving a fist or making a generic type of threat, we're going to take it seriously and respond accordingly, not over-responding, but certainly not under-responding. Now there's one more response that people won't see here, because there's no way to write down that the person simply does nothing. Well, there's really two ways to read that situation, and I'm reviewing to some extent here. The most common circumstance is that the person is right here, that they are in the same exact place as the person who's saying no. So they're simply using a tacit or unspoken form of noncompliance. And our response is to respond to that person as though they said the word no. We're going to use that concrete behavior that we talked about, or concrete communication we talked about before, saying something such as this. Well, I'm not hearing a response from you after about a minute, so I'm going to assume that means you don't want to do it. Okay, now we're going to go off and let the contingency speak for itself. However, there is a variation on this, and that's a person who's withdrawing, who looks like perhaps they're nervous or insecure in trying to do this. And when that happens, especially if I'm not quite sure how to perceive that person's behavior, I'm going to use a communication style that's quite different than any of the ones that are on this slide. Instead, I'm going to say to the person, I'm not sure why you're not responding. I'm not sure if it's because you don't want to do it or if it's because you don't feel comfortable. If it's because you don't feel comfortable, you can let me know and I will help you. Now, if a person's nonverbal, I'll even be more specific, and I'll say, you can let me know by tapping me on the shoulder, or by handing me a yellow card, or by showing me some other way that's been agreed upon by myself and that individual, and hopefully my colleagues. So when that happens, I have to understand that a person isn't just being non-compliant, they're being insecure and avoidant, and they may need me to take turns with them in the activity, or to guide them or support them through it, or to show them more clearly how to do that activity. Don't assume that hesitancy from a person is always that person being non-compliant. And a curious thing happens. Sometimes when people are being non-compliant, but I respond as though what they need is support, they actually stop being non-compliant and realize that they are not needing to challenge me back in order to become a powerful person in that interaction. All of these responses are effective ways of dealing with people at the early levels of being emotionally agitated. There is nothing that will work as well as being a good relationship builder and a preventative, pervasive, effective communicator. So we don't only want to wait until a person's in crisis mode. We want to use proactive techniques and preventive techniques. And that's the information we're going to be getting into beginning in Module 5. This ends Module 4. Thank you very much for participating in this module and for any of the other courses that you've been a part of. We'll look forward to seeing you in Module 5 next.